Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express. It's time for press review and the headlines that are making news in some of the local dailies. On the Standard, we have Maraga. Why we gave it to Uhuru. We know that the Supreme Court judges gave their verdicts yesterday. A prayer for Kenya on Jamhuri Day, that is on our Standard. On our Daily Nation, how Raila's exit doomed poll petition. And on the Star, Ida, NASA chiefs made Raila retreat. Now, we're going to start with our very own The Standard. And joining me in studio to dissect all these papers is Deckillah Omukoba, who is a political analyst. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Especially on a day when we are marking, you know, our 54th birthday. Is it? I think I should tell you happy birthday as a Kenyan. So happy 54th birthday. Is this the Kenya that you want?
I mean, we are still working, you know, as a nation to move forward. We definitely do have dreams and goals and visions, and it is something that we are constantly working towards. We have definitely come a long way. We have to say that. We have our own challenges, like any other nation in the face of the world, but we tend to try to navigate our own challenges. And I think that Kenyans, we are very hopeful people, that we are hopeful that the future has a lot to hold for us. So we'll continue to champion it.
I hope so too, as a Kenyan. I hope so. We could do better, honestly.
That's for sure.
But we've come from far, and congratulations to us. So I'll start with the first one. Maraga, why we gave it to Uhuru. Now, Supreme Court judges explain their decision to uphold Kenyatta's victory, saying Raila's withdrawal was not legally binding and could not have occasioned cancellation of the October 26th poll, which complied with the law. What are your thoughts on this?
I think I would say that this is how the court has pronounced itself. It's very important for us to understand that everything plays under the Constitution, and every decision that is made by the court is with their submission to the Constitution. And as they have said, that the withdrawal of NASA or Raila Odinga from the elections did not nullify the whole process. And so based on how they have read the Constitution, then that is their verdict. And of course, there are so many other things that they put in place in as far as how the elections were conducted, and so based on those things, then they came up with this pronouncement.
All right, and of course below there you can see some of the quotes from all the 6 judges. If you want more on this, you can just get your copy on the Standard. We can go to page 2, and there you can see kids swimming, cooling off on page 2, which is really interesting. During this time, schools have closed. But on page 3, university students living dangerously. Now, a quarter of them have high levels of blood fat called triglycerides. Wow. Okay, biology wasn't my best subject. Now, university students are not eating well, are sleeping poorly, and are not active enough, and it has started showing in their health, according to a new report. Now, 20% of female students are overweight. 12% of males are also overweight, which the ratio is 3 to 1. I mean, we take sodas every day, not forgetting the fast food joints that we have everywhere. How can we help ourselves? I personally think I'm among those who take a soda every day. So, yeah, how can we help ourselves?
I think that it is more of the creation of awareness when it comes to, you know, the way we feed, and of course our lifestyle in regards to, you know, how we take care of ourselves, and continually, you know, the narrative that was there when we were young, balanced diet. I think that it needs to come back again. But of course we have to understand the challenges of university students when it comes to issues of where do they get food. Do they get the right kind of food, or do they, just because of maybe financial issues or maybe the weight of the program that they are in, they're able to access this kind of things? So just by saying that they are not eating right, maybe that is just a symptom of the real cause of the problem. Are they able to access, you know, this kind of nourishment from where they are?
For me, I think in university the problem was the taste. Foods were not really as tasty as you'd get at home, so you'd always opt to go buy fries or, you know, sausages to just eat. But on page 4, concerns raised over state of housing in rural areas. Now, at least 1,500 substandard houses are built in Kenya every week. According to Habitat for Humanity, a global organization that assists low-income families access decent and affordable houses, millions of Kenya live in substandard houses despite advanced building technology. This issue of substandard housing, I mean, We've seen so many cases. We've seen houses go down during rainy season. And at where we are as Kenyans, I think it's time that this shouldn't be an issue, the issue of substandard materials, you know, substandard housing. If we know what the problem is, why aren't we tackling it?
I think when it comes to, you know, the rural areas, the people who are there can only use that which they have at their disposal. And sometimes also it's issues of, you know, money and poverty that come into play. So they're not able to build this kind of elaborate houses, you know, in such areas. But when you move over to the urban areas, then it is always the issue of greed and corruption, where people just build because they do want, you know, some financial gain at the end of the day. And even the people and the systems that are put in place to have these things checked do not do their job because there's a lot of money that is exchanging hands. So we need to go back, you know, to the drawing board and be able to address these issues. When it comes to the rural areas, we need to be able to invest and offer support in those areas. But when it comes to urban areas, we need to tighten the system so that when people, you know, build houses and build establishments, that they're able to do it right.
Yeah. All right. Next to it is to die in separate love-related rows. Now, this issue of page 4, it's on page 4, to die in separate love-related rows. Now, this issue of gender-based violence. We've just seen the campaign against 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, and this issue has been reoccurring over and over and over. So many people have died in cases that we could have avoided. Maybe is it counseling that we need? Is it more awareness? I don't know. What is your thoughts on this?
Of course, Ashley, when it comes to issues of gender-based violence, I think that is maybe a separate story as opposed to this one, when we have, you know, a dimension between, is it gender-based violence or is it issues of, you know, relationship and love triangles, which is a very different, you know, thing altogether. But of course, when we talk of issues of gender-based violence, it's something that we constantly have to, you know, reinforce and be able to make sure that women, you know, are able to be treated right, and that they get, you know, sometimes women get abused in situations that they are not able to come out of. And it is because of a myriad of so many things. And so the constant empowerment of women is very important so that they are able to, you know, be able to sustain themselves. And sometimes it's also a financial thing, you know, that we need to empower the women, and even from a very young age, where we make sure that they go to school and they are able to be exposed to some of these things, and they have opportunities for them to advance themselves so that they do not, you know, seem to be under, you know, subjected to some of these very harsh conditions.
So when it comes to love triangles, as you say, there are two different cases. What can be done, honestly? Because I don't even know where to start myself. So I imagine someone who is in this situation, how can they be helped, honestly?
I think for love triangles, that is more of a personal ethics thing, because then you have to be very respectful of where you find yourself in terms of relationships, and be able to understand, you know, that if there is something outside of that, then it can lead to very negative issues. So that is more of a personal ethics and values thing.
All right. On page 6, Supreme Court holds Raila did not properly withdraw from the election. We've already discussed about that, which was the headline on the Standard. So we will just move on to page 9, where Linturi sues UN for readmission. He says, we go to page 9, where Linturi sues UN for readmission. He says he learned about his deregistration from a master's program through the television. Senator Mithika Linturi has gone to High Court seeking to be admitted back to the University of Nairobi. Mr. Linturi claims he was poised to graduate on December 22nd of 2017 with Bachelor's of Laws degree and paid tuition fees for master's program at the university. First of all, do you think it was right for him to learn through TV? I mean,
I don't think it's, you know, about right or wrong. It's just the way that he learned it, which was, of course, for him not the best way. But we have to remember that he is also a politician, and therefore when it comes to matters of people who are in limelight and political life, then this is what tends to happen, because they live their life on the public space. Of course, you know, the very right way to do it was that this thing would have had to go through the right, you know, protocol and the right dimensions for it to come to him. We understand that he has already gone through the entire process of studying in the school, and therefore, you know, the school should be, you know, have some, you know, when it comes to responsibility, how come this particular student was able to go through the entire process if his papers were not right.
Yeah, why
so,
now?
Yeah, why now? So I think, he is valid to go to court and be able to challenge this thing.
And according to court documents, UN is questioning the authenticity of Linturi's degree from Baba Sahib Ambedkar Marathwada University, merely known as Marathwada University. So we wish him all the best in that case. And on page 10, turns to page 10, Kenya still can't feed herself 54 years later. Wow. That headline there, just Kenya still can't feed herself 54 years later. Up to 2.6 million people cannot afford a decent meal more than half a century after independence. Food security, you know?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this? I'm just going to let you just comment about this. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think this year we had gone through a very difficult time when it came to issues of famine and what we saw especially on the northeastern side of the country. And, this is something that we keep on seeing every year when we have problems, with rain. And I think it is time for us as a nation to be able to find ways to mitigate the situation. It's not as if we are not aware of how the cycle goes in as far as, seasons are concerned. Yeah. So it's good for us to be able to have a strategy in place so that when we have plenty, we can be able to store for the times that we do not have. We do not have anything. And of course, also to go into places like Northeastern and be able to see what can be done there. Maybe what is being done is not sustainable. So it's time maybe to rethink what can be done in some of these arid and semi-arid areas so that to be able to sustain the citizens that find themselves in those places.
It's sad, actually. It's quite sad because no one should miss a meal. But we can just move on to page 11, where police warn of terror attack. Page 11, police warn of terror attack. Now, Al-Shabaab sighted in Ijara sub-county, Garissa. Security personnel have warned that Al-Shabaab militants might be planning an attack in Lamu and surrounding counties. So now that we already have this warning, I think it's time for the government to put in the necessary measures to help, because we don't want to see our fellow Kenyans dying. What are your thoughts on this?
It's very true that if there is intelligence coming forth, on matters to do with terrorism, then it is very, incumbent on us and, of course, on the forces that are charged with this responsibility to act very quickly and very swiftly, because, of course, we have seen this kind of challenges before when we have had terror attacks, especially in some of these areas. So we should continue to tighten the security, especially in areas where, we are prone to terror attacks.
All right, we can just move on to page 12. In page 12, where leaders call for unity. Leaders are calling for unity as Kenya turns 54. Now, Sheikh Khalifa Mohammed, Council of Imams and Preachers of Kenya, organizing secretary there, Francis Kimemia, who is the governor of Nyandarua County. We have the Deputy President, William Ruto, Jackson Mandago, who is the governor of Uasin Gishu County, Anne Waiguru, who is the governor of Kirinyaga County, and many more, including the Senator of Baringo, Gideon Moi, who are calling for unity as Kenya turns 54. Now, we'll go to page 14. There's a drawing there of a lady who is carrying a child with a basket or a bowl with old promises, new promises, and a hand with recycled promises. I think the picture speaks for itself. But what are your thoughts on this?
I think this is more of, what people tend to experience when it comes to issues of politics, where, our leaders tend to give a lot of promises and people peg their lives on some of these promises, and then it doesn't happen sometimes. And then when we go back to another electioneering season, it's almost like the recycling of the same promises,
Promises after promises.
And I think sometimes, people begin to get very wary, because when you dish out a promise, you kind of like throw hope to a group of people. And if that hope then gets disappointed, then at the end of the day, there's such a feeling of weariness on their part. So I think that the government should continually, be able to move forward with some of these manifestos and the agendas that they had in place.
And today being Jamhuri Day, we expect speeches from our leaders. So we're wondering what they're going to say now. All right, let's now take a look at what's making headlines in the nation. How Raila's exit doomed poll petition, we've already discussed that. But just below, gender as dilemma as girls lead in class, men rule the world. Now, this is on page 20 and 21, but Kenya's biggest paradox in the battle of sexes is that while girls do well in school, they are scarcely represented in business and politics. I know maybe we might be a bit biased here because we're girls, but what are your thoughts on this?
I think that, you know, we are trying to make strides when it comes to issues of gender and representation of women, especially in some of these positions. I would want to say that the journey of a girl sometimes, you know, has its own challenges. It's true that we do face, you know, there are so many girls that are doing well at this level, but by the time that they start climbing up the ladder, sometimes the challenges that they face along the way, it looks like it's survival for the fittest, you know, and therefore this continual reinforcement of the empowerment of the girl child is particularly very important. And it's not just for, I just don't believe that it's about giving women positions at the top. It's just not about that. It's more about empowering them, because if we empower one woman, then we are able to empower an entire nation. So it is not just something that is women best, in my opinion. It's something that is nation best. It's something that is global best. We need to pull each other together, both genders, for us to be able to move forward.
But you know, the issue is most of our men always go back to our traditions. You know, the woman's place is in the kitchen. So maybe this is just some of the issues. Now below there are news of 8.7 billion funding for typhoid jobs. That is good news there. But we can just go to page 2 gets to open early as Uhuru leads Jamhuri Day festivities. We're going to be seeing that, and KTN News is going to be covering that, so be sure to stay tuned. On page 3, Varsity cancels plans to award Atwoli a degree. Varsity cancels plans to award Atwoli a degree. Now, the NAT boss Sosion blames Education CS for institution's decision to take back the doctorate. A local university has rescinded its decision to award veteran trade unionist Francis Atwoli an honorary degree. This is maybe similar to Linturi's issue. You know, being in the limelight, always your issues are going to be everywhere. But to page 4, tactical blunder that denied Raila a chance to be the president. We've already discussed that. Now let's take a look at what's making headlines in the Star. It's still Ida NASA chiefs made Raila retreat. Oh, okay. That is, Ida has said NASA chiefs made Raila retreat. What are your thoughts on this?
And that would be, you know, which retreat, particularly, you know?
I think it's for the swearing in.
Of course,
it's on page 27. Let's just go to page 27 and see what they're saying. All right. Are we getting it on page 27? No,
it seems like it's not. There's no page 27.
All right, so that's just one of the headlines. On page 2, police chopper crash cost taxpayer 2.2 billion shillings. Next to it, digitize your services to boost revenue, counties told. So these are just some of the headlines making news, making headlines in our local dailies. If you want to get to know more about that, make sure you get your copy of the Standard at your local vendor. Thank you very much, Deki, for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you here on Morning Express.
Thank you.
We take a short break here on Morning Express, but we come back with more.